Folks, I hope everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving. And by this point, I hope you're getting your Christmas trees up and going to actually have some time to spend with family and focus on the important things before we're all sucked back into the fight. I want to plant some seeds tonight, and I want to plant some seeds in regard to 2026. We just came off a massive victory. Donald Trump in the White House changes things, gives us hope, lets us see that a nightmare we've been living with for now 4 years is finally coming to an end. And it just everybody watching this contributed to that. There's no one person in this state who won that fight. You guys won this fight. A movement won this fight, and you should be proud and you should be pumped. What I hear from people a lot these days is, okay, look, we got momentum. We're psyched. People's morale is back. What's next? We need to move on. We need to move on to the next fight. And I think that's critical. And I think it's really positive that that's how people are reacting. They're not reacting as if, okay, well, Trump's got it. We can go back to sleep now. They've learned the lesson. We got to stay engaged. We got to keep hammering. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, all over this state, there's Republican lawmakers everywhere who stood on stage with Trump wearing MAGA hats and are now taking off the MAGA hats and have every intention of going right back to business as usual and continuing to march as they were before and pay no attention whatsoever to the America First movement, the MAGA movement, Patriot movement, whatever you want to call it. So we got a lot of work to do. And again, first, you need to focus on getting the tree up and drinking some eggnog and spending some time with family and friends and enjoying that. But then we need to really get to work, and we got to get to work on 2026. I mean, I'm going to talk in terms of the state legislature and races for the state legislature here, but obviously we're not just talking about the legislature. We're talking about school boards. We're talking about county committees. We're talking about county commissioners. We're talking about a whole raft of offices. But let's just use the state legislature as an example. If you got a Democratic rep that needs to go, or you got a Republican in name only rep that needs to go and needs to be challenged. Really, as fast as we get past the new year, you got to be sitting down and you got to be organizing and you got to be focused on how it is you're going to make that happen, because that amount of time between now and then will flash by. Before you know it, you'll be actually in the primary election. And the amount of work here and the amount of focus is tremendous. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking in terms of Jamie Walsh winning his race in Luzerne County. You want to know why Jamie won? Well, Jamie is the reason Jamie won. After that, people like Deb Jordan are the reason he won. But myself and Jeff Kerr from the coalition were in at the inception of that campaign 2 years ago, sitting in rooms as these people organized and providing our advice for whatever that was worth. And think about that. A real quality candidate who had already been very, very active and was very savvy and very bright, incredible work ethic, and very organized, who was assembling his team and pulling together his support that far out in advance, and then building that battle plan, and then following that battle plan, raising the money, knocking the doors, creating the platform. I mean, all of this has to be done in a really, really, really organized fashion. Finding a guy who says he'll run and getting enough names on a petition to get his name on the ballot. I'm not going to say that that's easy, but that's the tip of the iceberg, man. That's nothing. First, you got to make sure that's the right guy that'll work, but also can articulate, can talk to people, will understand the campaign, will eat his life, but also understands that in the end, he's got to win a general election. So being able to get the 30 people who attend your group meeting every month fired up and screaming is nice, but that doesn't necessarily translate into arguments that will convince the majority of people in a general election to vote for him. So you have to have the right candidate. And then now we're moving into, you got to have a platform and a way of articulating it that is going to reach people outside of your movement and even ultimately outside the Republican Party. You gotta find those issues that will resonate with those people, and then you got to find a way to articulate them. Otherwise, you're screaming and you're shouting and you're making a lot of noise and your campaign is over before you start. And think of all the other pieces. Volunteers. Who's recruiting those volunteers? Who's supervising those volunteers? Who's maintaining the candidate's calendar? Who's raising all the money to do this? Particularly if you're challenging, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, some incumbent. Somebody's going to show up and potentially dump $1 million into the race to beat you. You don't have to match that, but you're not going to beat them with 25 cents. At some point, you're going to run into things like buying radio time and paying for printed mailers. And it doesn't matter what your support is. That stuff's not free. I don't want to get lost in all of the details of this. We can talk about this going down the road. And there are a lot of people around this state who have been giving training classes on this and talking about how to do this for a long time. I encourage you to find this. My point here is to begin to plant these seeds. Yeah, we need to capitalize on momentum. And to do that, we got to work really hard. We got to grab a hold of things. We got to begin that process right now, figuring this out, beginning to lay the foundation. You can walk onto the field with the requisite number of guys to play the Pittsburgh Steelers if you want. If you think you're going to win without a whole lot of work, starting with it better be the right guys, not just the right number, and then everything else that goes into that, well, in other words, there's a lot of hard, like everything else in life, there's a lot of hard work. So point of this is not to discourage you. It's exactly the opposite. You're pumped, you're psyched, you got your eye on the prize. Okay. Begin right now to conceptualize how you're going to do this. Let's find these candidates. Let's find the money. Let's begin to build the organization. Let's do it right now. Let's start working right now in 2026. Okay. I expect to talk to you again before Christmas, but just in case, Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you for everything that you have done for this country. You guys are the ones who stopped Kamala dead in her tracks right here in Pennsylvania.